This isn't just Kia's smallest car they sell, it is just simply one of the smallest cars you can buy here in Australia. At just over 1.4 meters tall, this tiny Kia Picanto just got an update, and to be honest, I think this is one of the best micro cars you can buy. But if you want to do your own research on the Kia Picanto, go to productreview.com.au because there you can read reviews from owners who have bought and lived with the Kia Picanto to see what they have to say about this. The Japanese make small cars called K cars, but the Koreans also make tiny cars like the Kia Picanto. Now this is the most expensive Kia Picanto you can buy, so it's going to be the fanciest, smallest car you can buy from Kia, but it's actually not that expensive. This thing tops out at just over $23,000 here in Australia. Now that does mean this isn't the most affordable car you can buy in Australia, but it does have stiff competition from cars like the Suzuki Ignis and the MG3, meaning that this isn't the cheapest car you can buy in Australia. Now this update brought a new light bar up front and also new LED lights. So this thing looks way more futuristic than it used to. Underneath this itty bitty bonnet, you're seeing a 1.2 litre 4-cylinder natural aspirated motor, which is running off petrol, which only makes 62 kilowatts and 122 newton meters of torque, and it sends its power just to the front wheels. And that's sort of all the power you need in a car that weighs less than 1 ton. The Picanto GT line comes with these new geometric looking small 16-inch alloy wheels, which look very cute, but they do look a lot better than the previous generation. You have power folding mirrors, but you don't have keyless entry and locking. Instead, you'll have to take the key out of your pocket to do all that. But don't worry, you don't have to take the physical key out until you start this thing. And the good news is that this car takes regular unleaded fuel, but it has a tiny fuel tank. It only has a 35 litre fuel tank. So if you're going on any road trips, you might have to fill up a bit more frequently than a slightly larger hatchback. And this GT line also gets these nice side skirts here. And to be honest, in this adventurous green color, that is the name of this premium paint color here, it looks quite nice. Believe it or not, I managed to carry around 5 people in this thing. And I will tell you that the 3 people who had to sit in the back were cramped. That's because this middle seat here is very tiny, but the outer 2 seats aren't too bad. I have okay amounts of headroom, but my knees are a bit jammed against the seat in front of me as a 5'11" adult, but I have pretty decent feet room. I've also got a USB-C port in this GT line model as well, and the seats have this artificial leather which just feel nice and comfortable. And the doors, yeah, they're big enough to get in and out of, and they're not too cramped to sort of squeeze yourself out of this car. And you do get 1 mat pocket back here, not 2 for whatever reason that is. Now it doesn't take a rocket scientist to turn on this car. It doesn't have push button start. What has been interesting is the layout for the automatic gearbox. This has a 4-speed automatic transmission, and here we have our gears for first, second, and third, which allows you to rev out this motor to make the most of all of those 62 kilowatts. And it's pretty easy to operate and nothing too complicated there. We have a storage area below the USB port, USB-C port, and also a 12-volt socket. And we have the washing machine style gauges for your climate controls. This touchscreen here has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So it doesn't feel like you're driving around in a particularly ancient car. These seats are very comfortable, but we have the world's smallest armrest right here. Now this gauge cluster is also very useful. We have a digital speedometer, which means you'll know exactly what speed you're doing, so you don't have to worry about any speeding fines. Not that you would have to be too worried because this car isn't that fast. You've also got a digital rev counter, and you have some information in the middle to tell you about your car, which is all very useful and feels definitely more high-tech than your 10-year-old Yaris. But check this out, we get new rear taillights on the Picanto, which I actually think look really cool. We get a new Kia badge, of course, and something I found a bit odd is that the GT line badge was angled up a little bit as if it wasn't put on straight. We do have a tiny little bit of diffuser action happening back here. Of course, we have a very useful rear wiper. But yeah, this thing's cute. It's very easy to park. It's a big appeal of this is that if you live in the city or you get stressed about parking, buy one of these, you'll never have to worry about parking again. Now, don't expect any power tailgates for around $23,000. Instead, you get a manual tailgate, and here we have 255 litres of boot space, which is enough for a few backpacks and groceries. It's actually not a bad space because it actually is pretty deep. And then underneath here, we do have a spare tyre, which is very good news, seeing that most new cars do without that. You can fold these seats down in a 60-40 split to even make more room for yourself, and you'll get a total boot space of 1,010 litres. And as someone who drives a Fiat 500 day to day, I can tell you this is a pretty generous boot space for a microcar. If you haven't driven a microcar and you've only driven SUVs or large sedans all your life, take a breath of fresh air and drive one of these. We're going up a hill right now, so I'm going to plant my foot to get up here. Oh my gosh, and that's what I kind of don't like about this motor. You really have to rinse it out to get more power out of it because it's not that powerful. 62 kilowatts, it's nothing really, but I did find it surprisingly okay to putter around with 5 people on board, and it actually performed relatively well, far better than I thought it was. What was most impressive, when fully loaded with passengers, this thing does not hit bump stops going over any sort of aggressive speed bumps, which, yeah, that was really impressive. Although I was being a bit more gentle, I wasn't trying to absolutely smash it over a speed bump, a bit like how I hope most people would normally drive. It performed really well, cornering while fully loaded, really just put together. And so if you're worried that this car is a one-person driving experience, it really isn't. And that's what I really like about the Kia Picanto. It's quite versatile for city driving. Don't go looking to do any track days in this. Don't go looking to sort of, you know, beat people off the lights. You're not going to. You should just learn that now before you embarrass yourself. The brakes are smooth in this thing. The 4-speed transmission can be a bit clunky because it's only got 4 gears to choose from, and this is a naturally aspirated motor, so it wants to rev out a bit more. But to be honest, this car is actually one of my favorite cars to drive because it's so refreshing to drive something that's so light and also something that just doesn't have a whole bunch of power, but it's also very easy to park. It's fun to pilot. It's got interesting steering. It's got good feedback here and there because you have these tiny wheels, and if you go into a really fast corner, you'll start to feel this thing kind of understeer. But parking is not an issue, and that's the #1 thing you're worrying about if you're buying one of these. And also squeezing through people like this in a busy area, which is all intentional for this review, it's actually not too bad. Now, this has a reversing camera and rear cross traffic alert, which is very useful in tight city streets when someone might be trying to squeeze in behind you. Something I wasn't so much of a fan of was how thirsty this car was during my time with it. I was getting around 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers, which isn't particularly fuel efficient. Even though I've heard other reviewers get around 6 liters per 100 Ks, I haven't been particularly enthusiastic with the throttle either. So if you're looking for a brand new micro car with a 7-year warranty, this is my pick.